and you're looking and checking various different things on the exterior of the aircraft.
Greg Holbrook knows what he's looking for when it comes to aviation safety. He doesn't just fly himself. He used to be an inspector for Transport Canada.
It's critically important to have competent pilots because they are the final check and balance in a system of checks and balances.
After decades of getting out of the game of testing pilots, Transport Canada will pull out of even overseeing how those tests are conducted on site. Major airlines will begin overseeing their own tests this fall.
We're talking about the last remnant of independent oversight by Transport Canada.
Commercial pilots have to undergo regular testing to make sure their skills are up to par. Some of these tests are done by Transport Canada inspectors, but most are done by industry evaluators who have been certified by the government. They work for the airlines. Transport Canada inspectors keep an eye on them to make sure the pilot tests are carried out properly. But starting this fall, that responsibility will fall largely to the industry. Before it decided to implement the changes, the government did a risk assessment and found it could cause a further erosion of Transport Canada's individual surveillance capabilities. But this industry group says the skies will remain safe.
Safety is the utmost concern of any airline operator, so we're not going to want to cut corners there at all.
As the aviation industry in Canada has expanded, Transport Canada has struggled to keep up and fill vacancies. McKenna says in his experience, industry-hired evaluators have better credentials than Transport Canada.
The people doing this for industry are much more frequent flyers and pilots than those inspectors.
But how do those industry inspectors compare to Transport Canada's own inspectors? Though the overall failure rates are low, Transport Canada's own data shows that when its inspectors evaluated pilots, they failed at a higher rate than those who were tested by evaluators employed by airlines.
We would suggest that there's a strong potential for a conflict of interest in that public safety is inevitably going to be challenged by corporate priorities.
Katie stuck around tonight to give us a little more insight into all of this. So there's some difference of opinion there, certainly, but give us some more detail about these competency tests. What exactly are inspectors looking for? How detailed do they get when they're doing them?
Well, Rosie, these are really comprehensive tests. I mean, it takes the pilot right from the moment they eyeball the airplane, the flight plan that they have to file. They're tested on instrumentation. They're tested on what happens if there's a serious event, like the engine fails mid-air. These are all the things that they have to be able to demonstrate. And if they make one critical deviation during this very elaborate test, they fail. It's game over.
Well, that's sort of reassuring for passengers, frankly. What do we know about how often pilot error does play a part in accidents in this country?
We tried to get that information from the Transportation Safety Board, which of course investigates these incidents, but it doesn't track or categorize how many of these incidents are caused by pilot error. But we did get an internal Transport Canada report that looked at pilot training programs, and it found that over the last few years, pilot error is up 200%, and it warned unless there are serious changes made, Canada could see a serious aviation disaster in the next 5 years. So these documents and all the industry people we've been speaking with over the last few days all seems to point to the fact that changes are needed because the system just isn't working right now.
Okay, Katie, thanks for that. Appreciate it. All of this comes at a difficult time for the industry. Not only is it getting harder to find inspectors, it's also getting harder to get professionals in the cockpit. According to Transport Canada itself, there are 60 unfilled aviation inspector jobs right now in various specialties. And that could be a problem, given the growing demand for their expertise. It's estimated that Canada will need 7,000 to 10,000 new pilots by the year 2025, requiring more inspectors to make sure they're up to snuff.